Imagine if you grabbed a Centurion, ripped the turret off, got a Emil 2, grabbed the turret off of that one and stuck them all together. Then that is exactly what this heavy tank is actually all about. And this is of course the STRV-K, which is the Swedish heavy tank at tier 9, and it is essentially a British/Swedish hybrid, which is a little bit of a Frankenstein on World of Tanks console. So we're going to have a look at it today, since it has been available for free a few times, and we're going to have a look at exactly how this thing plays. We've got 2 replays that will come up shortly, and of course if you're not interested in how we've set up the vehicle, the statistics, you can always skip ahead to that point. But more importantly, what have we ran this tank with? We'll get into why later on as we go through the stats, but we have run with vertical stabilizers, advanced loader and advanced optics, a typical setup in a heavy tank, because we want to be able to hit things, we want to be able to deal as much damage as possible in a shorter period of time, and we want to be able to spot the pesky mediums and light tanks who are going to be sat in the bushes, or at least be able to spot them when they fire at us. So that is the loadout that we've gone with, and essentially this vehicle, because it has the medium turret of being a Centurion 7/1, you have the ability to spot, so 512 meters view range is amazing for a heavy tank, and it definitely plays more like a medium if we're going to be really honest with each other. So how does this tank actually kind of stack up in terms of its statistics? Well, it is pretty meaty, and that means that you have a fairly decent top speed, 48 kilometers an hour, but your power to weight ratio is not ideal. You are kind of slow to get up to that top speed, and also maintaining that speed is a little bit of a problem. It has 1850 hit points, which is, to be honest with you, perfectly fine, and you're not really going to have too much problems in that department. It's not like, you know, hit points really determine how good or how overpowered or how weak a tank really is, unless it's substantially low, and I'm talking usually they're the low tier tanks in the game. 512 meters view range, like we said, this is not the base value. Of course, the base value is significantly reduced. We are running it with a commander who has the following perks if you want to have a look at them. We have run key ones to note are, of course, steady aim, rapid loading, brothers and born leader, snapshot, and we've gone with some of the camo perks as well as the view range perks as well. So this is kind of more of a medium setup that allows you to spot and also deal damage at the same time, rather than going for a pure heavy tank build that this tank probably doesn't suit all too well anyway. But back to the statistics. We have a turret rotation 41 degrees a second, 36 on the hull, so fine with being out traversed. It's pretty good at being able to deal with that. 10 degrees of gun depression, which is amazing, and definitely enough to basically deal with anything on a ridgeline. You have a reload of 7.66 seconds, which allows for a damage per minute of 3058, and that is because the armor damage 390. So this tank actually has the British main armament, or the 10.5 centimeter that is the STRV-K L52, but it is essentially the same as the British 105s as well. So no real difference in that department, and allows you to have that higher alpha that some of the other mediums and heavy tanks at the tier simply don't have. And moreover, mainly some of the mediums. The heavy tanks are going to be able to deal with you quite easily, since the armor model of the vehicle is not particularly great. I mean, the turret is fantastic, you're able to bounce quite a few rounds. Hull armor though, different kind of story. It is quite easy to pen, and if you've ever come up against an Emil 2, you pretty much know how to deal with this thing. As soon as it starts to angle to one side, you hit the upper plate. As soon as it angles to the other side, you hit the upper plate on the other side. And of course it has a big lower plate, so if it's frontal towards you, you can hit that as well. The real problem with this tank is if it does manage to get hulled down, whereby you can basically go and screw yourself unless you're playing in a super penetration TD, at which point you can pen the turret as well. But of course, as soon as this tank starts to turn the turret, you can hit this area here on the left and on the right hand side. But yeah, it's still not an easy penetration, so just keep that in mind when you see this tank in game. Now, we've talked a lot about the statistics. I feel like it's time to jump into the game. Tank doesn't actually get a silver bonus, so it's not even a premium tank, but it is a premium tank in name only. Doesn't give you a silver bonus, so you can still lose quite a bit of money in this tank. Penetration wise, 252 on the standard, which means you don't have to fire premium rounds in this thing to make it work, and that is quite nice to be able to do. So let's jump into some gameplay. Now, our first replay that we have for you today is on one of my least favourite maps, or at least one of my previously least favourite maps, and this is Kasserine. It's mainly because it's quite a traditional map in the sense that it's very linear. There's a lot of common themes when every time you play this map, it usually ends up the same way. You have corner fighting in essentially C2 and 3 sector, essentially. It's like that kind of area, which is where we'll be taking this tank in this game, but you also end up then with primarily the fight in the middle, and then sometimes you'll end up with a little bit of a fight on G9, which is essentially the bottom right hand corner of the map where the two teams meet. But in this replay, we're going to show you a couple of positions that you can use, how to use them effectively, because I see a ton of players actually going into them, but often not quite realizing how to actually use it effectively. But what we're going to see here is a somewhat traditional starting point. We can get some free damage usually when we push up to this point. Obviously I'm angry that I missed that shell. Should have been a free hit there, but missed it either way. But instead what we do here is we push down. We don't sit on top of the ridge. It's boring when you sit up there. You don't get enough opportunities to deal damage, so we're not going to sit up there. We're going to come to this position right here. What does this position here do? Well, it allows you to deal damage against some of the vehicles, like for example the Batchat 25T, who's pushed up on this side. Surprise, surprise, there's a corner fight in C2 and C3. Lovely to see. But we have the Legion, we've got a few tanks over here, and essentially we've just got to try and deal with them. You're seeing here the TNH, which is the Tier 9 kind of Skoda version, or the Czechoslovakian heavy tank, which we can quite easily deal with. We try and go for a speculative shot on the STRV 103, but we don't manage to hit. Absolutely fine. This tank reloads pretty quickly, and yeah, it's not really too much of a problem. Now with the enhanced combat rations, it allows you to get quite a bit of damage output increase when you use it. Obviously you get an additional 10%, so it's nice to have that, or an additional 25% even. So when you're using that, it becomes quite easy to deal a ton of damage. So you want to prioritize when you use it to be able to deal with some of those harder targets and ones that you have to really push out that damage against. Now the Legion on the enemy team, of course this is like the pattern variant, pulls out, and we managed to put one into the TNH. That tank, it's a good one if it can pen both of its shots, but because we are fairly quick, mobile, and of course more medium-like in the game, we are able to quickly move and change course. Now we get very lucky to hit that M48 there, kind of a lucky shot. I mean, we were aiming in where we should have been, but yeah, it was quite a flick. So glad that we hit that. We've picked up 1200 damage. We've only taken a small minor amount in terms of how much health we've got left. We are in a pretty good position. And with the Batchat 25T now pushing towards the people in the mid, I need to start thinking, well, I need to support this guy, because if the Batchat 25T gets allowed to essentially just YOLO people, it's not going to end up too well for our team. And if our team are starting to fail and starting to flag, then we are going to lose the game. I'm not going to be able to get as much damage. This is often a theme that you see with a lot of players, where they just simply will not help their team whatsoever, and it always comes back to bite you. Even if you think, you know, your team should be able to do something, if you can help them out and it's not really going to cost you anything, then yeah, absolutely, you shouldn't try and win, because of course you can then farm up damage at the end of the game, and maybe we'll see that in this one. So what have we done right here in this play? Now this is a quite aggressive play, but what it allows me to do is get into a nice little position where we can use the turret armor of this vehicle to really plow a couple of rounds through the opponents. Now the problem that the enemy team have is that I am kind of hold down at this point. Now there's an M103 side of the turret, easy pen. And this is where we can essentially just sit here and deal a lot of damage. Now the M103 obviously trying to pull back down the ridgeline, we can put one straight into the side of him and pen, using that good penetration on the standard rounds. But M103's turret is not particularly amazing, and there you go, a nice little roll there to be able to hit him and also pen in the top of the turret. You can basically just pen that with most vehicles. The M103 turret really does suffer in that department, but at the end of the day, we have played a ton in the M103 back in the day. And there are ways to avoid it. You can put your gun up in the air, you can try and wiggle, and it makes it a little bit difficult. Obviously the enemy M103 not feeling like he wants to do that, but instead finds somewhere to pull back behind after he fires. Now then, with the opponents kind of coming from all directions, it's not particularly amazing, and he manages to hit us. I'm getting annoyed that I'm just not playing well, or at least not hitting my shots where I should be, and so we decide to push up to here. Maybe we can get one more into the M103, make it difficult for him to be able to hit us. The M103 then misses. We track the E75, but I'm very wary of this ISM, because if he pulls up from my left, I'm going to take a shot, and then it really does put me in an awful position. We try go for one into the M103's cupola, but we don't manage to hit it. I can't really poke the E75 without exposing the hull armor, which is not good. The ISM actually manages to get hold down here, and that means that we are going to have to try and deal with him. We're going to have to focus him. Can we get one into the lower plate? Yes, we can, but he does hit us. Not good at all. But we have picked up 3,800 damage and also blocked 2,200, so it's not been too bad when you consider this vehicle in the game, and of course given the fact that it does have that kind of weird troll bouncy armor. Now the M103 is still there. We try and put a speculative shot. We don't want to sit there and fully aim, because of course that gives him time to aim, and when we're cresting a ridge it's not ideal, and he might be able to get a free shot into us. But he needs to go. We really do need to get rid of this M103, and I'm hoping we could do that, or someone on the team is going to be able to help me get rid of him. But STRV trying to run away. We put one into him easily. M103's pulled back, so not a problem with us anymore. And maybe we can get one into the cupola finally. No we don't. It's a nightmare. But maybe we get another one into the STRV, start moving up. Maybe we can get a little bit of a shot. Hopefully, can we pull past the Jagdtiger? We find the side of the STRV, and of course with the STRV's side armor being absolutely garbage, we can go straight through the side of it, and there you go. Nice little 4.5k damage, and a pretty decent result. Didn't pick up a whole lot of assistance since there weren't too many people over here to help me out, but of course not a bad game whatsoever, and of course a pretty good tank in general. But let's jump into the next one straight away, because you've seen how this tank plays in this one, but let's have a look at a different map. And that different map is Erlenberg. Erlenberg being a map that is typically your camp fest, or whatever you want to call it, where a lot of stale gameplay happens, but this tank can actually be the breakthrough. You can use that turret armor and of course bouncy armor on the turret to be able to really block opponents from doing what they want to do, and you can also counter them quite hard with that hard hitting gun, and that's hopefully what we're going to be able to do. Now because of the speed of the vehicle, we can get into the position where the mediums with a decent turret can go, which is essentially what we are, and that allows us to move up to where this Leopard PTA is. Hopefully we can hit the Centauro. We do, but unfortunately don't manage to pen. Not a problem. We continue over here. Now there is a heavy tank. It is the TNH or the VZ who's pushing up. I believe it's the TNH at tier 9, and of course the enemy team have also pushed up, but we can use this turret to be able to get a few shots into these opponents on the enemy team who have pushed a little bit too hard. But because we're now firing the premium rounds, the Object 257 doesn't really become a problem. Now that tank is almost a kind of premium round tank where essentially you just have to load premium to be able to reliably pen it, but luckily we do have the good premium penetration, 312 I believe on this tank. We can just double check that real quick. No, 310 to be exact, which allows us to essentially go through most heavy tanks at this tier, and obviously you can go for the cupola shots as well. Don't manage to hit it on the 257, but either way, not a bad attempt. And of course if we do manage to pen him, it's a nice little one, leaves him on a one shot, but we will not dismiss the free damage on the KPZ. That's exactly what we try and get. Now the KPZ don't quite know what he was doing. I then bottle the shot there, and maybe we'll get one into him. Can we? No, I did bottle it entirely. But don't worry, because this tank doesn't really take too long to reload, like we say, for the alpha that it does get. Now it isn't a tier 10. Now I've said that this tank is good. It's got a good reload. It's not bad. At tier 9 you will definitely be able to deal quite a lot of damage. It's quite a nice one, And of course, unfortunately, it is a premium tank, which kind of sucks because I feel like this tank is not really going to sell a whole lot. And it would have been nice to have some additional tanks in the tech tree for the Swedish tanks, more like the traditional medium tanks as opposed to just being your traditional autoloaders that the Swedish tanks have, at least on the heavy tank line. Whereas this one, you know, it would have been nice to have as like a hybrid, one that you could pick both lines off of, maybe where you could go towards the UDES and also you can get the Kranvang, and it could kind of be an additional tank, or even if it was just a tank that you could achieve by playing the tier 8 and it didn't lead anywhere else. I mean, Wargaming have never done it on console, but it could be an interesting topic for them to do at some point. Maybe I'll actually leave that in the Q&A that I'll be doing with Wargaming sometime soon. So Defender starts making a misplay, don't quite know what he's doing. I was going for the tracking shot. We do hit that tracking shot, which is nice. Maybe we can get another one into him. This is the sort of things you want to be doing with the tank. Even if it doesn't have the best reload where you can re-track opponents quite easily, you can still do it. And that is where medium tanks can become very, very powerful. Now we hit the 705. A tank bounces off of us, which is not surprising given the angle of our slope here. And then we bounce again off of the 705A to leave him alive, and then he gets hulled down again. Oh, how unfortunate. But maybe we can go for this AVRE. It's always good when you start removing the hit points off of one of the, how shall we say, balanced vehicles at tier 10 and one of the more annoying vehicles. But you know, because it's an AVRE, he doesn't have to pen us and he takes out a load of our crew members. Thank you very much for being a really good tank at this matchmaking. But the game is not over, even if the majority of the tanks on this side have been taken out. It's time to go and try and defend the base, because I don't want to lose to any little filthy cappers that are going to try and jump in there. And of course we're going to go over to this location here. We can get hold down if we need to, but we're going to see what the enemy team are going to do. Now, there is a Reaper Scythe. This is the kind of Warhammer 40,000 430U at tier 8. It's got decent armor. It's a decent tank. Is it overpowered? No, I don't think anyone's going to be saying that. But it is. It's an interesting one for sure. And maybe we can get up close and personal with him and show him that he isn't very overpowered. But we're seeing here the Tiger 2 using its turret, which it does actually get a decent one. Unfortunately for us, since we just want some more damage here. But unfortunately not able to get it. I decide, you know what, I've got the hit points. I can take about 4 shells before I really have to start worrying about health point. So we just push in and hopefully we can get some more damage on the Tiger 2 and some of the ones over here. But the rest of the team are also having the exact same idea. Maybe we can hit the Tiger, we do, but we bounce, yay, brilliant. And then our team are just going to go in and swamp them. So no more damage for us, but a pretty decent result. And you can see that when you are in a nice position where you can get hold down, you could see you could actually dominate some of the true heavy tanks at tier 10. And that's a very nice thing to have in the game, and of course why the SDR-VK is a tank that I wanted to feature today. And if you have your own opinions about the tank, if you've got it for free, if you've played it, let me know in the comment section down below what you actually think of this tank. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Yeah, I'm very interested to see what you think. And of course stay tuned, because tomorrow we're going to be having some extra content coming out for you, featuring some other vehicles in World of Tanks console. So stay tuned, and hopefully you have a fantastic rest of the day, and of course a fantastic rest of the week. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.